Welcome to Trailblazer Spotlight, where we meet the leading innovators in Web3 and Metaverse marketing and explore their stories and insights. We are meeting today with Nic Hill, who is the co-founder and head of interactive at Sawhorse. During his tenure, Nic has cultivated a dynamic team of leaders, creating immersive metaverse experiences for some of the biggest brands, studios, and agencies in the world. He strives to push the envelope on immersive experiences by blurring the line between film and gaming. Before this role, Nic was an independent film director, editor, and created internationally acclaimed documentaries. In his spare time, he enjoys DJing, biking, and spending time with his wife and two kids in Los Angeles. Nic, really excited to have you here today.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Dan. This is an honor to be on the podcast, and I'm excited to chat with you.
Okay, likewise. So let's get into it. So since Mark Zuckerberg changed the name of Facebook to Meta, we have all developed our own kind of like take on the word metaverse. So how do you think we should be thinking about the metaverse space?
That's a great question. And I think that Zuckerberg renaming his company to Meta and saying that the metaverse is here and ready for everybody to enjoy was a huge mistake. And I think it caused a lot of confusion. And it's like, made my job more difficult to help unravel it for all these brands. The one thing I remember, this headline, and you probably saw it too, is like the metaverse is dead. Do you remember that? Like the logo?
Oh, yeah. People are still using that in on some of their posts and stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And I got so frustrated because, what I was thinking so much about was that the metaverse is not dead. And it's not dead because it was never here. We've never had the vision of the metaverse. It's never come to fruition. So it's just adding so many layers of confusion for people. Like, is the metaverse VR or is it not VR? Or is it here now or is it not here? Or is it something that nobody wants? It failed. No, all this stuff is incorrect.
And then you get a lot of people that feel like the metaverse has to be tied into Web3 specifically too, as well.
Yeah. I mean, look, any like futurist or sci-fi fan knows that the vision of the metaverse was created by in the book Snow Crash, that first kind of described it and what it was, and then also we dove into it further with Ready Player One. And essentially this vision of the metaverse is like this fully immersive, interactive, persistent, magical place where you can do whatever you want. And the fidelity is so high that basically it's attractive and used by everyone in the world, right? So do we have that today? Absolutely not. So, experts say it's somewhere between like 5, 10, 15 years out before we'll actually have that. I'm bullish on it. I think it's going to be game changing for everyone in the entire world, but it's not here yet. So, and unfortunately, the name metaverse now has like it's got a bad stigma to it. It's almost like I don't use it as much. I kind of don't bring it up around certain brands. My hope is that it comes back. Everyone hates the metaverse now. We're now doing something else. And then maybe 5 years from now, when we have a huge jump like we had like during the pandemic, we can say, oh, the metaverse is back. Let's really take it seriously. But as of right now, I think that word is kind of a bad word.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it kind of depends on who you're talking to. Like I was at a party over the weekend, and you bring up like Web3 or Metaverse or whatever, and I think 75-80% of the people still have no idea what you're talking about. Excuse me. So I think within the industry, the word metaverse is more in the industry per se, kind of negative, and we're kind of like switching to immersive. But I think the general populace, they still kind of don't understand. But if you're saying immersive versus metaverse to the average Joe, I think metaverse still they understand the word metaverse more than they would, let's say, immersive or UGC gaming or something like that.
Yeah, it's true. but I still think the general sentiment is I don't quite know what the metaverse is. I think Zuckerberg tried to make it, and I don't think it did well. So the metaverse is nobody wants that. Like I think that's what the average person thinks, and I just think
Yeah.
yeah, it's not worth talking about because we don't have it yet. We can't judge it. We can't judge something we've never seen or experienced.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So I would imagine the kind of a follow up on that is like, even when you're talking to, let's say, like new clients, people kind of like for the first time, and you're kind of getting into it, that you have to do a little bit of like education just so that everybody's on the same page in terms of some of the terminology.
Absolutely. So I've kind of like shifted away from the word metaverse and shifted into UGC gaming. And
Yep.
what we do is we talk to clients and brands and we try to help them understand what this space means, how they can activate within it. And for me, I've really shifted it to this concept of UGC gaming, which we all understand what, UGC content is as far as like the Web 2 revolution, like all of the social platforms. Every user, any person can make a video or tell their story and upload it to these platforms and gain this massive following and have this massive reach. Like we all understand
Yeah.
that revolution that happened. We're now seeing that in gaming. So people and brands can build their own experience from scratch. It's not insane. It's not an insane lift to do that. And you can immediately access this massive community and audience and make impact there. And this is new for brands and new for everybody. And I feel like that's what the metaverse is today.
So you touched on UGC gaming. So could you dive into that a little bit more and your personal feeling of why brands should care about it and get involved in it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, just like that revolution we had in the Web 2 space and social media, we're now seeing it in UGC and UGC gaming. And the reason why brands should care is because young people, Gen Z and Gen A, are spending all of their time there. And it's kind of the trend and direction we're moving in. If you look at the amount of time that they're spending on all different platforms, it's pretty astonishing. Studies show that like they're not watching TV, they're not listening to the radio. Those are almost zero. Then you look at
Yep.
social media engagement, which they have a lot of. It's they're spending time on like TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. But what's really interesting is they're spending almost double the amount of time on like Roblox and Fortnite and Minecraft and all of these interactive UGC gaming platforms. So I think brands that want to reach younger audiences need to show up where the people are, which is in those platforms. And also I think brands that want to future proof and stay around and stay relevant and continue to grow, they need to grow with the younger audiences so they know who that brand is and they stay with them. Because right now we can kind of look at them as like the younger audiences, but over time they're going to become just the more mainstream audience. And that's where, interactivity and gamification will be standard for most people, So it's like, we're seeing this huge growth in gaming as far as it's, the amount of people that identify as gamers, it's skyrocketing. The majority of the world currently plays some kind of game. I mean, look at all the mobile games on our phones. I think everybody knows people of all ages, parents, grandparents that might be messing around with that. And I think that younger generations, it's second nature because they grow up in that,
Yep.
they didn't have to learn how to use a cell phone. They didn't have to learn how to like play a game. This is just stuff that was around since birth for them. So I see a trend in this interactivity, and if brands want to, stay relevant, they need to be there.
Yeah. It reminds me so much of previous tech shifts. Like I remember being involved with social media early days and trying to convince, brands to get into Facebook, and they were like, "That's for my kids. We don't need to be doing that."
Right.
Then years later, TikTok went through the same thing too, right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I was looking at kind of to your point. I was looking at a study today, and it had a graph, and it was like what percentage of time are you of your entertainment time are you doing in gaming, right? And so it was like Gen A was here, then like Gen Z, and then down to boomers here. So every every generation, newer generation, now younger generation is spending more and more time in gaming. So to your point, so personally, how did you get into, I don't know, should we say metaverse, or how did you get into the immersive metaverse UGC gaming space yourself?
Yeah, that was a great question. So, I grew up as a gamer. I grew up with the NES, the old school Nintendo, very first
Mm,
generation. I got that as a little kid. Loved it. Played Mario and Zelda and Metroid and all that stuff, and I just like fell
yeah.
in love with gaming. But I also loved entertainment. Like I watched a lot of TV when I was a kid, like lots of Disney Channel, lots of movies. Loved Star Wars. My parents took me to see Star Wars, so I was like 1 years old or something. So I was in the theater, and I just loved creativity and storytelling my whole life. And when I started my professional career, I kind of gravitated to the film side. So I got into
Mm,
filmmaking, making documentaries, and really kind of took that direction professionally. And then I built lots of branded content, took advantage of the democratization of media in the early days where, the film cameras and video cameras were becoming really cheap. Quality was coming
mm,
really high. Like we talked about earlier, these social platforms were available like YouTube to build your own stuff and stream it and, get build an audience that way. So really did all of that. And at that time, there were no UGC gaming platforms. So in order to make a
right.
game was kind of a big undertaking. In fact, a lot of my buddies from back in the day, they went the gaming route. So they interned at AAA studios. Now they all make games. But I was on the other side going like, no, I'm like on the film side. You need to kind of pick a
Mm,
lane. But I think what I'm so excited about today is about these UGC gaming platforms where you don't need to have a massive background in game design or game development in order to like actually build there and make impact. So I was lucky because one of my close friends, Morgan Tucker, who was high up at Roblox
yep.
at the time, during the pandemic, he was working with all these brands and realizing like there are not enough dev studios that can deal with these brands properly and kit them onto the platform. So he had this great thought of like, more agencies should be working with these brands and more agencies should be building in these UGC gaming platforms. So he suggested we get into it. And at first I was like, well, that's not for me. Obviously on the film side, I've never made a software product. I'm not a dev. Um,
Yeah,
this
yeah.
seems scary to me, but he said, look, you guys can learn it, work with people in the community, figure it out. So we spent a ton of time doing R&D because I was passionate about it with my gaming background. I was like, I would love to make some kind of a game, right? It's all the same
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
It's creativity and it's storytelling. Instead of doing it in video form, now you're doing it in 3D interactive immersive form. So our first project was Aloe Yoga, which we made a great pitch. We didn't know what we were doing. We just thought some crazy ideas. And then we won the job, surprisingly. And then we had a very short runway to build it and launch it.
No, you knocked it out of the park too. That was
Oh,
a very,
thank you.
very successful game.
Yeah, it was. We had a lot of success. The team that worked on that was phenomenal. It was really cool because half of the team was from my traditional Sawhorse production side of like directors, creative directors, art directors, 3D artists, visual effects artists. They all kind of came together. And then the other side was devs from the community who now work full time with us at Sawhorse. So Roblox devs, Roblox 3D artists, and we kind of formed a kind of a unique group, and we built that experience. And that's sort of the DNA of our teams in general. The way we work, we really like to look at these as experiences and not just games. So we like to get diverse
Yep.
viewpoints and kind of mash it together and make these things. But yeah, that's how I got into it. And that, like you said, Aloe, it has performed extremely well, and it kind of opened up a lot of doors. And we started working with much more brands and more projects from there.
Okay. So fast forward to today. Um, So, for our listeners and viewers who may not be familiar with Sawhorse, can you give us an overview of what your key services are right now and what your differentiators are in the market?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, Sawhorse, at this point, we are an agency that helps brands tell their stories, and we get their messages out to younger communities and groups. Um, we started as a traditional production company, so we have that capability to do full production, physical production, post production, animation, all of that. And now we have this interactive side, which we can like now tell those brand stories in interactive ways. We do a lot of work on Roblox, UGC gaming platforms, also like Fortnite and Minecraft, Spatial, Sandbox, Decentraland. We've done all of that. We also do, um, you know, interactive campaigns. So leveraging like augmented reality. So making like augmented reality apps for brands. And also we leverage generative AI uh, collaborations. So what we'll do is we'll build like Gen AI applets and for brands and allow users to come in and co-create and build new art and new stories, and then they can share that with their friends. So at this point, we are basically a 360 studio that is helping brands tell stories in traditional and immersive cutting edge ways. And I think that some key differentiators for us compared to other agencies is we do have that wide range of skill sets. I haven't seen a lot of that. I've seen a lot of great production companies that don't touch interactive, or I've seen amazing interactive studios that like, shy away from like physical production and whatnot. Like we do all that, which is strong. We also have a marketing wing. So we have in-house marketing strategy and delivery, and that's all part of the agency side of our company. And as far as the type of work we produce, I think what makes us stand out a little bit is what I said earlier about how we take this approach of we're building experiences. We're not a traditional game studio that's like, how do we make the next great game and slap a brand on it so it's going to do well?
No, you explained that well, and it has to be pretty amazing to you where you were, like you were basically a film studio and everything that you're involved in today, and it's so exciting for me. It's like when I'm seeing some of the experiences that you're doing, kind of like the Roblox, and you're getting into like e-commerce, and it seems like every time I see a any kind of like a promotion of your latest experience, it's doing something that you've never done before. And to me, I find that to be really, really, really exciting. And and the other thing that you mentioned that I think is so important is being like a brand comes to you, and so you're helping them do the experience, but then it's like the marketing aspect, being able to like help them with like the promotional assets needed to actually kind of promote it or whatever. It's like the whole 360 aspect that you're offering to me is just like it's genius, and it's so needed in the industry as well. It's really hard to find agencies that can be all on the same page, understanding what kind of needs to be done in each of the different silos of the experience. So
I just want to say about that, and like that has been the hardest thing for us. That has been the biggest challenge for me, because traditionally, starting as a production company in the digital space, there's already so much strategy involved with these brands by the time they call us. They already know how to market on these platforms. They already know what their media spend is. They would just be looking at us to be like, Sawhorse, can you tell this great brand story? We already know what we're going to do with our media plan, but we need a 30-second video, 60-second video that's going to work with this celebrity. And it has to be in a comedic space, and it has to involve hockey. And then it's like, great, okay, we'll just do all that. We make one amazing video asset. That team runs with it, and it has its success. With Roblox, it's like, and these immersive platforms and new innovation space, we get on calls with these clients, and they're like, what should we do? They're asking us. So now we're
Yep.
operating as an agency to figure out like, okay, well, what should we build? What are the goals? How do we design something that's going to perform on those goals? How do we market to the world to let them know that this thing got built? And how do we guarantee we get that performance? So becoming an agency has been a challenge, but it's been out of necessity. And now I've grown to love it because you have so much confidence going in. You design a product with goals in mind and with a marketing plan in mind, so you can execute on that. And the other thing I would say, the hardest like speed bump learning curve for me was the concept of this. The software itself, the product is persistent. I'm used to making videos where you make one amazing video that's 3 minutes long. And as long as somebody watched it once and thought it was awesome, you won. You're done. But like in the gaming, UGC gaming space and interactive space in general, these are living, breathing products that are constantly evolving. And you design it in such a way that you're not just watching it once or experiencing it once. You want to design it in a way that, incentivizes and encourages users to come back frequently, to develop over time and grow and have that story expand and, get the retention. And these are just big challenges and big, like, just it's a different approach and design challenges that we've really embraced, but that's been the hardest challenge.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would think that would be a really, really difficult transition for most studios, that are doing like film, video, whatever, to make. And you've been now involved in it for a couple of years, and you've kind of figured out all the steps. But a studio that's just like trying to get into it, oh God, that's got to be so difficult.
Yeah, agreed. And I would just say, like, it is really hard. It just is. But it's really great. I'm so passionate about it. I love it. I love telling stories, and I love telling stories in immersive, interactive ways. So from a creative standpoint, I think any studio could jump in because it's like, wow, you just took the guardrails off. I was telling a story that had a beginning, a middle, and an end. Now I can tell a story that is never ending, that I'm changing every day with my audience. So it's like, wow, from a creative standpoint, makes total sense. But from an execution standpoint, really, understanding how software works, how development works, how, you design core game loops for retention, all this stuff is a big learning curve. You have to really embrace it, and you have to work with amazing professionals that, really understand this stuff. You need to embrace them and you need to grow with them. And that's one thing we've been really fortunate to work with some of the top developers and 3D artists on the Roblox platform, who now are Sawhorse employees and part of the Sawhorse family. But yeah, that's the curve. You can't just jump in and be like, cool, we'll make a Roblox game. It's like, yeah, you can learn how to code it, and you can learn how to, make some 3D art assets and stuff. But you really have to understand you're stepping into a community. This is not just like, hey, look how great I am, I made a thing. It's like, it's absolutely not. It's like you need to understand the community, and you need to approach them in a way that they want to be spoken to or interacted with. So you need to be authentic.
Yeah, totally. So obviously you're working with a lot of brands, and it seems like you're adding a new brand every day. It seems anyway. But so why should brands activate on platforms, UGC gaming platforms like Roblox and Fortnite, from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main reason is to connect with younger audiences from a marketing standpoint. It's like brands need to stay alive. They need to go to where the people are in order to stay relevant. And I think that, as our point, as we talked about earlier, is that younger audiences are spending more time in these interactive, immersive UGC gaming platforms. And so I think if a brand wants to stay relevant, they need to understand this space and they need to get in. And I would say right now is a good time to test and learn. Like the marketing teams and the CMOs need to dabble in the space. They need to educate themselves. They need to learn about, what are these platforms, and, how are they different? Like, for instance, like you look at like Roblox, I think it's at like 67 million daily active users or something today. which is just
77.7 the last time I checked.
77.7, right? So massive, it's just those are unreal numbers that I think any marketer needs to take serious. It's like it's that's where they are, and they're all there. So I think brands need to pay attention, and especially if they want to access younger audiences, now is a great time to get in and experiment. But also just to, like I said earlier, to future proof, have a presence there so that
Yep.
you create that awareness and that brand love and loyalty. And over time, once the younger audiences become a position of the next consumer, they already know your brand and they think you're cool, so it makes sense.
Yeah, and if they don't do it, then they potentially risk getting behind a competitor who may be doing it while they're not. And I
100%.
see you're dabbling now
One thing I just want to throw in there as well is that, like, younger audiences, they value authenticity. Gen Z and Gen A, they don't want to be marketed to. They don't want intrusive marketing. Like, because they're watching less linear TV. We're used to it. Like, we're watching our show, and okay, now I have to deal with these commercials. It's fine. I've accepted it. I would argue that, like, younger generations have not accepted it. They're like, how do I skip? How do I not have this? I don't want this. Like, so I don't think that type of marketing works for them. And I think that, like I meant my point earlier, they value authenticity. And I think what marketers have an opportunity to build something that's very organic and very, very authentic within these UGC gaming platforms, and to, create a game that is valuable to the user. So you're giving them free entertainment. And then also you can reward them for their engagement and participation by giving them free UGC wearables for their avatars, or, access to loyalty programs, all kinds of little benefits. That's valuable marketing. And not only does it work and speak to younger generations, but I would argue that this is just fun marketing that's actually good and valuable, that people
totally
enjoy,
agree.
because they're opting in to experience it. And once they're there, they're like, oh, great, cool. I appreciated that. I enjoyed my 15 minutes. That's awesome. And I got this little thing. That brand's pretty cool. I'm good. That works. I think driving down the freeway and just seeing a massive logo and being like, buy this, I think for them, they're like, I don't want to look at that.
Yeah, and I see you're getting involved with more and more platforms such as Zepeto and Rec Room, and I'm guessing those platforms give you an opportunity to kind of communicate to a particular demographic in a setting that they're more comfortable with. So the experiences that you're creating on that platform will resonate more with them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, it's the oldest rule in marketing, right? Like, meet the people where they're at, if you want to reach them. And I'm really bullish on this concept that we are in this trend of young people spending more time on the UGC gaming platforms, and it becoming more of the mainstream in the future of the way people consume media and entertainment. So for me, trying to do more work on the emerging UGC gaming platforms like Zepeto, Rec Room, it's just moving in the right direction. I think for me, it's like skating to where the puck is going to be.
Yep.
So
Yep.
Yeah, I'm bullish on that.
Yep. So obviously the space is always changing, kind of like daily. How would you describe, though, the evolution of, and I even hate to use the words, but like in-game advertising? How would you say that it's different now compared to, let's say, like 2 or 3 years ago or whatever?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say that advertising in video games has been around since the beginning. This is not a new thing. Like in the late 70s, when they had like MUDs and, text-based games, there's evidence of like certain companies or brands like just being worked in there, just because it's, from a marketing standpoint, it makes sense. People spend time there, they're going to connect with a brand. And then I think like in the 80s and 90s, you saw a lot of licensing, so it's like this brand would license into like a large title that would be on the consoles. and kind of like make their impact that way.
Yep.
Like for instance, like the Domino's, there was like a Noid game, character. There was like a Pepsi Man game. So there's,
Yep.
you could do that. There was a lot of that. And then there was like in-game advertisement that reflects the way advertisements work in the real world. So you could just straight up like get a billboard in like GTA,
Yep.
little things like that. But I think what's new is these UGC gaming platforms where brands can come in and build what they want to. And there's not that, the barrier to entry has dropped significantly. And I think the creativity and the design like options have really expanded. And I think that going back to what I said earlier, it's just about, these being experiences and not just games. That's exciting to me because there's no actual blueprint that brands can follow. I think that's what's really amazing is that they can think like, how do I want to reach this audience? And once I have their attention, what do I want to say to them? And how do I want to interact with them? And so that from a creative standpoint, that's awesome because you really have an opportunity to reach them in new, unique, dynamic, and valuable ways. So that's one of the reasons why I love this stuff so much is because you can take an advertisement and turn it into something of real value and fun. That's never been done before. So I love partnering with like dynamic, marketing teams that want to think outside the box and build this type of marketing in games, which is new.
So let's dive into that a little bit. You've had the opportunity to work with quite a few brands. What are some of the activations that you feel are some of the more innovative that you have worked on?
Awesome. Yeah, we've worked with so many great brands and we've had a lot of interesting projects. Not all of them have been home runs, but the majority have performed fairly well. And there's been some major hits within that group. So as far as innovation goes, I'll highlight three that I think are interesting. The first one is Aloe. We talked about it a bit ago, but
your very first one.
very first one, it's like, rapper's first album. It's like you drop hard and then it's like, can you make that type of thing again? Yeah. So like that experience was awesome. I think one of the reasons why it was so innovative and cool was that we didn't take a game design approach to it. We took an experiential approach to it, and we were very naive. And I think that was actually a real competitive advantage we had because we weren't like, oh, let's make Aloe Simulator or meditation simulator or Aloe Tycoon or whatever, which still would have got good engagement because that's what players on the platform tend to do. But we really looked at it. We just took a few steps back and said, what does Aloe do? What is that brand all about? Like, what is the ethos, and how do I translate that into a 3D immersive environment? Forget about a game for a second. How do I just make them show up there in an authentic way?
Yep.
And I think that we really leaned heavily into the meditations because Aloe has a app called Aloe Moves, which does guided meditations and yoga tutorials. So we really thought that bringing meditation to the platform would be beneficial and unique. And so we doubled down on that idea and we built we gamified meditation. We made it in such a way that users could pick how they wanted to meditate. And then the more they meditated, the more they could unlock and earn within the game. And we kind of created this habitual meditation on the platform. So users were coming back each day to meditate. And what I love about this is it really added real value to the user. So from a marketing standpoint, you're connecting with them because you gave them something of value. You're not connecting with them just because you're there, So I've read so many heartwarming and touching comments of young people talking about how they struggle with depression or, they have stress in their life and how they've been like going to Aloe to meditate and to like reset, and they're so thankful that they have this thing. So I love that project because it's innovative. There hasn't been a lot of meditation on the platform, and it drives real value for users. That's what's cool
Yep.
to me. It's like when an advertisement is really something of value for people, that's cool and innovative, and I think that project delivers on that. The second project I'll bring up is Kung Fu Panda, which we released earlier this year. It was a massive success. That experience was promoting the new Kung Fu Panda film that came out. We released it about 3 weeks before the theatrical launch. It had massive engagement. It had something like 16 million visits within those 3 weeks of users all spending upwards of 10 plus minutes in that experience playing and being immersed in the lore. We also gave away an emote, which is like an animation move, skadoosh move from the film that users could earn, equip to their avatar, and then use that across the entire platform. This is a really successful project. And we also leaned into the obstacle course game design that is popular on the platform.
Yep.
And it worked well. But where the innovation comes in is, one of the executives on that team from NBCU was talking about how when they market these animated films, they have a hard time reaching the audience that they need, which is young people. And they were saying that they can't reach them on TV because young people aren't watching TV. So those trailers aren't working. They
Right.
can't reach them on social media platforms because that demo is too young to have a social media account. So all of the influencer content and the paid social trailers that they're running, they're not seeing them there. They're only seeing them on Roblox. So if they want to reach that and touch that audience and move the needle, they have to be there. And there was an article that came out in Variety a couple months ago that was kind of laying this out and just showing how films like Kung Fu Panda and Despicable Me have been massive successes at the box office. And those animated films that haven't, done UGC gaming marketing, they don't reach the same numbers. So that to me was a kind of mind-blowing moment where you see the power of this platform and how unique it is for users. And then the last project I would just highlight as far as an innovation side is Walmart Discovered, which is an experience that we built. And it's innovative for several reasons, but I think the first one being in its design. We didn't create Walmart Discovered or Walmart World where it was oh, this is all the great stuff about Walmart. Come here and see how cool we are. For us,
Yep.
the perspective was, let's figure out what Walmart does. Going back to the brand ethos, they make people's lives better and easier. Why? Because they sell cost-effective things, and there's a Walmart within something like 8 or 9 miles of anybody who lives in the US. So it's value add to people's lives. And so for us, we were how do we translate on to Roblox? And we came up with this concept of discovery, because finding new games and finding UGC and digital wearables is kind of a challenge on the Roblox platform. So we decided to say, what if Walmart came in and made that a little bit easier or more fun for users? So we designed an entire game around that. That was the game design. And that's non-traditional. That's innovative, because, what a lot of studios will choose to do is let's make Walmart Tycoon, because we know the users like the Tycoon game mechanic and they'll just be there. But how is that connecting to what Walmart actually does? I'd argue that it doesn't. So that was really an innovative approach, and it's been a hugely successful project and continues to be persistent, which is also unique. But another reason why that project is innovative is we were the first company to work with Roblox to roll out e-commerce within that experience. And that e-commerce was a test and learn moment across a partnership across Roblox and Walmart and Sawhorse. And what we did is we partnered with the community to have them go to Walmart and find items that the Roblox community would actually purchase or care about. So it was a tumbler and a bag and, cost-effective, cool things that make sense to Gen Z and Gen A. And those UGC creators we partnered with on the platform, they created digital twins of those items, but put their own creative spin on them. And then within our experience, we allowed users to purchase the real item. And when they did, it came with the digital item. And that's performed extremely well and kind of was an indicator that there needs to be more e-com and more bottom of funnel conversion and sales that need to be happening within these experiences. And it was just amazing to be part of that team to pioneer e-com. And I think we're going to see a lot more of it in the future.
Yep, I'm sure. I I saw your post. You had the whole team at your studio, I think last week. So I'm looking forward to whatever the next element of that is. So, but those are really three great. And I know you've done so many, but I'd have to say those are probably three of my favorite that Sawhorse has done. So, other brands that are listening in, what would be your advice in terms of like best practices to make sure that they would be successful in terms of actually coming into and doing their first experience on one of these platforms?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think obviously this is a new space for most brands. I would argue almost every single one.
Yep.
There's no clear blueprint for them to jump in. So the advice that I would give, the most important thing is to understand that you're stepping into a community. You aren't just advertising in a broad sense, and you need to respect and understand them and figure out how to integrate into this platform in a way that community is going to be receptive to. So you can either, bring on UGC Gamer lead to join your marketing team, or you can work with agencies like Sawhorse, but who understand who that community is. And when you understand what the demographic is, how the community thinks, what they value, then you can design experiences that are going to be successful. We just talked about some 3 very successful experiences, but we've all seen the headlines of these brands that have not had successful experiences, that have had these major failures where they show up to the platform, they aren't taking the community in mind, and they're basically saying, I'm so great, look at me, check out my cool stuff, and it goes back to that being that intrusive kind of like annoying type of advertising. And yep. I think when brands do that, it's like
old school.
But when they do that, you run the risk of the opposite, where it's like your brand becomes a meme and people dislike your brand. And from a brand lift standpoint, it goes in the opposite direction. And it's like, then you just wasted a bunch of money and time, and it's what's going on. You have to like either fix that or you have to run away. So my biggest thing is like, you just have to respect the community. You have to understand it, and you have to be open-minded. That's another thing. Like, I think a lot of marketing teams and CMOs don't want to be told what to do. I think they're like, oh, we know our brand and we know how we want to, show up. And it's like, yes, you guys are, experts in your brand, and no one's telling you how to, how to represent yourself, but you have to understand this is a new way of marketing, and you have to respect the community, and it's a fine balance you have to find with them. And I think that's a challenging for marketing teams, but it's not an impossible feat, and we've seen success. I think if I had to sum it up, it would just be like, you need to have an open mind, and you need to have the desire to figure it out.
Okay. Last question. So, any trends? How do you see the space changing in forget about 2 years from now? It's like within the next year. What do you see happening? What are you kind of excited about for the near future within the space?
Yeah, I think if my predictions for just like 1 year from now, I think that the UGC gaming space is going to grow. I predict that, the user base is going to increase. I'd predict that we have either the same or more amount of brands coming in. Like in the next year, I'd probably lean on the more side because we've seen that trend over the last 3 years go up. So I
Yep.
think we're moving in that direction. Also, I think that we're going to see more bottom of funnel conversion opportunities for brands. So instead of it just being a brand awareness at the top of the funnel, I think we're going to see more ways of working in e-com, monetization, direct sales, more seamless ways of connecting loyalty programs into what's being built on these platforms. Yeah, and I see more platforms coming up and competing, and all of them just growing. That's what I see the next
Cool,
year.
cool. No, cool. I'm with you 100%. So, Nic, thanks again for sharing your insights. If someone's listening in and wants to contact you, how can they best reach you?
Yeah, if anyone wants to contact me, just feel free just to send me a DM on LinkedIn. You can just find me very easily there. Or you could check out our website, which is just sawhorsela.com. And there's a contact info button there that you can reach out to. You can also check out all of our traditional work and also interactive work on the site.
Cool. Again, Nic, thanks for joining us today.
Right
Take
on,
care.
Dan. Thanks for having me. This is awesome.